Hello, this is Neal Ormond, and welcome to this very special episode of the West Aurora 129 Podcast. I have the privilege to fill in as host today and kind of turn the tables on the original creator of these podcasts. Yes, our guest today is the retiring superintendent of West Aurora School District 129, Dr. Jeff Craig. Since 2014, Dr. Craig has led many significant advancements in the district, including passing an $84.2 million bond referendum, improving financial stability, and fostering equitable learning environments and career pathways. As the inaugural chairman of Aurora's Educational Commission, Dr. Craig actively engages in initiatives benefiting educational systems across the region and throughout the state. He is also an Athletic Hall of Fame member at Richards High School, and he played a key role in organizing wrestling events for the 1996 Olympic Games. Dr. Craig, thank you very much for joining us today.
Absolutely, Mr. Ormond. It's a pleasure to have you sitting across the table from me.
Well, it's my pleasure, and as a school board president at the time of your hiring, I was able to learn quite a bit about you during the process that the board followed. But I think our listeners today might like to hear a bit about your history before coming to School District 129. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and why you felt West Aurora and School District 129 was the right fit for you?
Absolutely. Probably what most people, I don't go this far back in my resume or my vitae, but started off substituting in special education. For back in the day, for those special ed folks, it was called BD, behavior disorders, and I had probably 90% of my work was in those classrooms. And this was in Ottumwa, Iowa, probably 90 minutes straight south of Iowa City, and a nice little town down there. And then I had the opportunity to move into the high school at Ottumwa High School and teach the math. And I was coaching 3 sports, football and wrestling and track. And then I had the great opportunity to get called by the assistant superintendent from District 218 out in the south suburbs in Oak Lawn to come teach woods and drafting at Eisenhower High School. And was also the head wrestling coach at Shepherd High School in the same district. And the following year, I had the opportunity to become dean of students at Shepherd. I was there for 7 years. Dr. Peterson, our superintendent, walked in one year and said, "I'd like you to move you over to Richards as the assistant superintendent for activities." And then I got my first principalship in Davenport, Iowa, Davenport Central High School. And was there for a couple of years when I got the call to come back to the south suburbs in Illinois as principal at Rich East High School. And I was there for 4 years. And Dr. Balo from District 308 reached out and recruited me to come to Oswego East High School as their principal for 5 years. And then I took my first superintendency in South Central Iowa at Interstate 35 schools, and was a small 1,000 student district K through 12, and covered a wide variety of square miles, 168 square miles. And that's where people found me, the search firms found me, and I had my first interaction with folks from District 129, and had the great opportunity to run the helm here at West Aurora and finish my career here. And it has been the privilege and honor of my life to be able to serve here. And I think the second part was why it was a fit. I think I worked in all of those stops that I mentioned. All of those were diverse populations. All of those had challenges. And I think West Aurora had all the above. And it was certainly an opportunity being a larger district. But I think the circumstances with how it came to my attention. I was not looking for a job.
I know you weren't. We had to know that we had to do some arm twisting to convince you that this was the place. But
it was a timing thing. Yeah, it certainly wasn't resistant to the opportunity. It was just my wife and I had just moved 6 months prior, and that's tough to do. But certainly, and it was a super, super small world. I think that first interview session, I drove 5.5 hours out here, met with the board for a couple hours, I had a good conversation, and then I jumped back in my vehicle and drove 5.5 hours back, and figured that was it. That was going to be the end, because there was a pretty decent pool of candidates at that time. Yes. And when I found out that I was being asked back for the next round, I knew I was in trouble. because I also found out that our strength and conditioning coach, Mr. Tom Krause, his aunt was the pastor in the church about a block and a half from the school district in Iowa. So it's a small, yes, it is. Yes, it is. So that's kind of my path. And then what drew me here was, I think it was great timing and great opportunity. And I think the timing was right for what West Aurora needed and the skill set that I could bring to bear.
Well, your passion for wrestling, your many athletic achievements as an athlete yourself, and both in high school and college, and then your achievements in organizing wrestling events for the 1996 Olympic Games are well known. And we were speaking about It's a Small World. My path and your path first crossed in 1996 down in Atlanta.
Yes.
When you were running the wrestling venue, and my youngest daughter, Chrissy, who at the time was a sixth grader, had just been named to the Beacon News Kids Board, and Sandy Stevens, who was the editor who chose her, and her husband had been very involved in wrestling, good friends of yours. And we got invited to sit in the prestigious box and watch you work hard, not knowing at the time, but being impressed by what you put on down there. And that was quite a sight. But I'm wondering how your background in sports has influenced your approach to leadership and education as a superintendent.
Sure. You know, I think I would be disingenuous if I was less than transparent about some of the difficulties that you are confronted with as a superintendent or a principal. These aren't easy jobs. And I think one of the things that we continue to be challenged with are obstacles or problems that you may have never seen before, never came across in your methodology class, or your doctoral studies. And I think what sports in general and wrestling specifically is I don't know that we've ever seen a problem that's ever too big. I don't think there's something I said, oh, no, I can't handle that. Oh, that's too much for me. I think we always have the mindset, let's figure out what we need to do. How do we solve the problem? Let's get after it, and let's make it the best we can. And I think, you know, that discipline that sports helps as an individual, that sports brings in terms of teams. You know, how do you interact and create great teams? How do you bring the right people so that you have the strongest team to move forward? Build some grit, some perseverance, some tenacity, to be able to be bold, to be daring. And I think those are aspects that I don't know that you can teach those. I think those are things that you learn through experience and you endure. And I think that's served me well because I look for those qualities when we hire people. You know, somebody that's going to be able to have an angry parent or a difficult situation with a student or a challenge with the building or challenge with staff, how we're going to get through it. And I think those are the people that you want to have that, you know, representing you, people that have some of those qualities.
Well, you hit it on the head. I think from a board standpoint, that was our perception that you were the man for the job because you had those skills. And right off the bat, you were presented when you came to District 129 with facing a decision by the board to go for a bond referendum, $84.2 million, the largest that we had ever gone for in your first year. Undoubtedly, you have many significant memories of improvements in the conditions that we've had across the district as a result of that referendum. But coming in as a newcomer who didn't know the community, you set about making sure that the community developed a trust in you, and that was very impressive.
Yes, and I appreciate you saying that. I think one of the things that, you know, the board really realized that there was lots of need. And when I think we were in the throes with our architect at the time with Studio GC to do our decennial report, and it identified well over $120 million worth of need of improvements. And I know the board had a really strong, hard line that said you shall not increase the debt side of our tax bill. And so that was a $90 million threshold. So we had to be south of that. And so we had to do some prioritizing. But first, we wanted to hear from our staff, from our parents, our community. What are the needs for our schools? What do you want to see for your kids? You know, we knew that there was, you know, that first year we had to cancel school for the entire district because it was excessively hot in a lot of our classrooms. We did not have any ability to cool our buildings down. We had 6 schools that had mobile classrooms. We had, so that caused a safety issue. It was a health issue. As you're well aware, having had a long tenure in this district, we had lots of needs that we had to tend to, and not to mention, not the least, but if you remember my mantra back then, the Civil War was fought from 1861 to 1865, and 23 short years later, Nancy Hill Elementary School was born. And so its time had come to be able to think about replacing that building and providing an equitable environment for those kids as well. I'll never forget our very first forum where we listened to staff, because we went to every one of our schools, if you remember. Mm-hmm. But our very first one was at McCleary Elementary on August 18th of 2014 in a gym that was sweltering hot, and it was packed with people, which was encouraging. And probably 50% of the audience didn't speak English. And so we had simultaneous translation. And I think it really was uplifting to know that our community was so vested that they wanted these improvements for their kids.
Well, you faced many challenges in those early days, but certainly that referendum, in my mind, was key. And your ability to be a leader of holding all of those referendum sessions, more than 100, was key, I think, to having the community develop its trust in you. Ever since day one, you've been a steadfast advocate for the importance of preschool education, something we had talked about, but we didn't have the money really to expand it. But you came in energized on that particular point, and I'd like to get your thoughts about how increased access to early childhood education in School District 129 impacted the community, and what long-term benefits do you foresee as a result of the initiative?
Yeah, and I appreciate you asking that. I came from a predominantly secondary experiences, and especially as a high school principal for 11 years and a high school dean for 7 years, I got to see firsthand where we had kids that were challenged with whether it was behavior, attendance, academics, participation when they were 13, 14, and 15-year-olds at our high school. And most of those kids did not have access to early childhood education. Right. They started off behind, and it evidenced itself. And so we had to remediate those challenges when they were teenagers. So my mindset was, let's get ahead of it. Let's get them on the right track. Let's get them ready for our K-12 experience when they're 3 and 4-year-olds, rather than waiting 10 years later until they're in high school. And now we have a larger challenge. So I think that was an important piece for me, is to, instead of fixing the problem afterwards, let's solve the problem up front. And that's why I was such a strong supporter of that. And I think, the pandemic has probably exacerbated the need to be involved, to be socialized, to be engaged with other adults and their peers, other 3 and 4-year-olds. And I think a quality early childhood program serves us best to prepare our kids for our K-12 academic system.
And our early childhood program really is second to none, I think, in the state. And it was because even though the state didn't give us money for some of these things, you figured out how to get it done.
Working through it, yeah. We added the full day program, and so now we're serving more kids and more of our community. And I think people we're figuring out we don't have to host all of those programs in our buildings, but now we can push out into our community and be a greater impact out there as well.
Well, during your tenure, the district has also expanded learning opportunities with programs like our advanced placement courses, dual credit, and vocational training in areas such as welding, precision machining, and advanced building trades. How do these programs prepare students for both college and career pathways, and what feedback have you received from our students and parents on them?
Well, it's another passion of mine. I hope I don't ramble on, because I could talk all day about this, but I think rigor, opportunity, I think balance is some things that we've missed, and we've done this. And I say we as educators, back in 2004 with the No Child Left Behind initiative, it was college or bust. It was all about the state test. And if you didn't succeed in that realm, you were going to be deemed to be a failure. And I think even in my own household, I had my oldest child, Jason, graduated number 2 in his class. My youngest one, Joe, was a good student, but school wasn't for him. And he had other skill sets that probably would have served him better if we didn't have the only avenue of an 8-period day, come there every day and be bored to tears. I think meeting kids where they are, finding ways for them to develop their passion, to show and demonstrate what they're able to do and what they know. I think the feedback comes in the form, and I'll give some statistics, and people have heard this before. We started with 22 kids in our automotive program, and we would ship them down to Caneland. They would cost them 2 class periods. They'd had to sacrifice to take one autos course. We moved them up to Mooseheart with a great partnership, but they still only had 1 bay. So our numbers weren't changing much. They just weren't sacrificing as much back at the high school. And then when we had the opportunity last year to expand that, we've gone from 22 kids, I think we're at 120 this year, and I got 25 kids on a wait list. And when I build out these other 2 bays, or when my successor builds them out, I think we're going to be almost 200 kids there rotating through. The other example when we built the Wisner Center, 18,000 square foot, 4 bays with advanced building trades, advanced precision machining, and we now have welding 1 and welding 2, where we started off with 18 kids in the welding program back in 2019. And this past fall, we opened up with 155 kids in the welding program with 33 kids on the wait list. So the feedback is, this is what we want because kids are signing up for the classes.
That's super. Education has obviously changed significantly over the years. I'm interested in how you personally have adapted to these changes, and what innovations are you most proud of and implementing in the district?
Once again, we don't like to talk about the pandemic, but I think the pandemic has showed us some different ways and different perspectives. But I think the career and technical ed aspect shows that it's not about seat time. You can't just count, be there 176 days, be there for 55 minutes, play the school game, and that made sure it's success. I think we found different ways to meet kids where they are, whether it's through alternative education, whether it's night school, whether it's early bird classes. There's a variety of ways to meet the needs of our kids. And I think West Aurora has done a great job in adapting. Maybe it's late starts or early outs, but know that not one size fits all of our kids. I think that's really important, that we know that we have to be flexible. We have to be amenable to how do we help kids find success. And it's not because of what I want or what has been done in the past. It's what do our kids need, and how do we provide that?
Looking back, what have been some of the most rewarding aspects of your role as superintendent of District 129? And I would ask that both from a professional standpoint and a personal standpoint.
There's, I think our alternative education expansion has been important, as I talked about. I think our pathways to prosperity has grown. We've gone from talking about it to executing it. And I think, that fills me with so much gratitude. I think I would give a pat on the back to Marty Nearing and her group with our safety initiatives. Mm-hmm. We're a model throughout the state in the northern part of this region. And I think we've put a premium on being ready, knowing that it's not an if, but a when, and how are we going to respond so that we keep our students and our staff and our community safe. So those safety initiatives are tremendous. I think a nod over here to Ana Gonzalez, our Director of Community Affairs in Communication. We've created a cadence. We want to make sure that our board is never surprised. Mm-hmm. And then who needs to know next? And what's the timing of that? And how much do we share without divulging private information? And I think that communication helps break down those barriers where people think we're not being transparent, that we're holed up in this ivory tower and we're keeping information close to our chest. I think back to the Pratt shooting, where we were trying to push information out every several minutes, both in English and Spanish, when we held all their kids until I think the last child was delivered well after 7 o'clock. So those communication pieces have been so critical and so important. And I think the other piece is that we've built a strong network among our peers and in our region when it comes to whether it's passing the state budget, passing the evidence-based model, getting our financial stability on track. I'm really proud of what we've created and established to help move the needle on a larger scale.
Well, when I was a guest on your podcast last year, you asked me, after I'd served 22 years on the school board, what I hope my legacy would be. Now I'd like to give you the same opportunity. What do you hope people will say about your time in School District 129?
There's people use lots of metrics and different ways to measure success. But I would offer this. If people felt like I worked really hard for them, that I improved our district in all aspects, that they were treated fairly, and that from that entry point back in 2013-14 to my exit at the end of next week, that I left West Aurora School District 129 better than I found it. I hope that's the legacy that I leave, and that's what I hope that people will say.
Well, you certainly have accomplished those things in the eyes of many people. It's been a real pleasure to sit in the host seat here with you as our guest today. But now I'll turn it back over to you to close out the broadcast one last time.
Well, it's been an honor and a pleasure to serve, and I'm eternally thankful to you, Mr. Ormond. You were critical in turning my head to being in this role here 10 years ago, so thank you.
It's a joy for me to be able to sit back, not on the board, and see all of the things that you have accomplished. You overachieved many of the things that we set forth for you, our expectations, and I know I speak for many people to say we really, really appreciate all that you've done for District 129.
It's been an honor. Please remember that you can find us wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, YouTube Music, SoundCloud, and the TuneIn radio app. And this is Jeff Craig signing off for the final time. Thank you.